Welcome back to your e-learning assignments. And on this assignment, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be doing a review of some of the graphing that we've been doing this year. You're going to be doing a little bit more graphing in your algebra class in the days to come. And so this is just a review on graphing lines. And so if you remember, when we first started graphing lines, we graphed them from a form called slope-intercept form. And this may look a little bit different because it's got an f of x here. This means it's a function of x. But if you just want to ignore that, you can just think of this as saying y equals 2/3 x minus 4. If you remember in this equation, one of these numbers is a slope and one of these numbers is the y-intercept. So before we start, which number is the slope and which number is the y-intercept? Okay, hopefully whenever you answered that question, you said that the slope was 2/3 and that the y-intercept was -4. And now remember, when that think of that y-intercept is actually a point. And so the y-intercept, we would think of that as the point. Oh, here we go. Let's fix that. That y-intercept is going to be the point 0, -4. So when you go to graph, remember you start at the y-intercept. The y-axis is this line that goes up and down. So a y-intercept of -4 means we're going to put our first dot right there at -4. Now we're going to draw a slope of 2/3. And remember, 2/3 means slope means rise over run. So that means we're going to rise 2 and we're going to run 3. So from this point, we're going to rise 2, we're going to run 3. And that gets us to this point right here on the graph. And those 2 points would be connected together then with the line that represents the solutions to this equation. And so our answer should look like this. All right, so that's what you're doing is you're going to be graphing these lines. And as long as they're in this form, then it's easy to graph because we know what the slope is and we know what the y-intercept is. Now, don't forget, there are some special things we need to remember, like this equation where it says y equals 3/2 x. What is your y-intercept going to be in that case? All right, remember that means y equals 3/2 x plus 0. So our y-intercept would be 0. So our first dot is going to be right here at 0, 0. Now we want to draw a graph of 3/2, or a slope of 3/2. So what would you do for a slope of 3/2? Okay, hopefully you answered that you would go up 3 and right 2. And so that's going to be that point. And again, those would get connected with a straight line. And that straight line represents every single point that makes that equation true. Remember, if the form is not in slope-intercept form, the first thing we want to do is get it in slope-intercept form. So here's an example of an equation that is not in slope-intercept form. So we want to rearrange that to slope-intercept form first. So remember, that means we're going to put all the y's on one side and all the things that are not y's over here on the other side. So go ahead and rearrange that and get that in slope-intercept form. Okay, so whenever you drew your line, okay, here was our equation, -2x plus 4y equals 8. So whenever you draw your line like you're solving an equation, you're going to move the -2x, which makes it plus 2x. You're going to leave the 4y where it's at, and you're going to leave the 8 where it's at. Of course, we don't want 4y, we just want y. So you divide each one of these things by 4. And so when you do, you get y equals 2/4x, or 1/2 x, 8/4, or plus 2. And so now to graph that line, we would start at +2. And then for a slope of 1/2, what would you do? We would go up 1 and over 2. And then, of course, that would get connected together with a straight line. And so every single point on this line, so for example, that point right there, -4, 0, or this point right here, -2, 1, if we put those numbers in for x and y, they're going to add together to give us 8. That's what we're doing when we're graphing this line. So we're just finding every solution that would make that equation true. Now, there were a couple of other special cases whenever we only had an x or only had a y. And so when you look at this next equation where it says y equals -3, remember you can think of that equation as y is equal to 0x minus 3. And now just graph it like we've done before. So what would your slope and y-intercept be? Okay, your slope would be 0. Your y-intercept would be -3. So you would start at -3. And then to draw a slope of 0, you would go up 0 and over 1. And you would get a horizontal line. Remember, anytime you have an equation that's just a y, it's automatically going to be a horizontal line. And we can remember for the next example, where it is just x equals 1, that it's going to be the exact opposite. And so that means over here, we had a slope of 0 and a y-intercept of -1. So when we look at this equation, instead of starting at the point 0, -3, we're going to start at the point 1, 0. So we're going to start where x is equal to 1 instead of where y is equal to -3. And then instead of going up 0 and over 1, we're going to go up 1 and over 0. And that's going to make that a vertical line. And so if you remember, every single equation that just says x equals is going to be a vertical line. I didn't do a very good job of drawing a vertical line there, but you get the idea. So y equal lines are horizontal, x equal lines are vertical. So remember those two special circumstances, because you still will see a couple of examples of that on your assignment today. So again, today you are just practicing graphing equations like you've done since first semester. But again, if you have any problems, make sure that you send me an email or send me a message through Canvas. So hopefully all of that was some good review for you. You remembered how to do all those things, and good luck on your assignment, because that's all, folks.